This is Economy Watch, what you need to know about New Zealand's economic life today. Brought to you by interest.co.nz.
Kia ora, and welcome to Friday's Economy Watch, where we follow the economic events and trends that affect Aotearoa. I'm David Chaston, and this is the international edition from interest.co.nz, and today we lead with news we need to get ready for a 3-degree future and start adapting to it. But first, initial jobless claims in the US came in at just 203,000 last week, much lower than expected. There are now 1.635 million people on these benefits. We're about a week away from getting the US non-farm payrolls report, and current estimates are that it expanded just 140,000 in October. That may be conservative. But the Chicago Fed's monitoring of their National Activity Index reveals a slip in September. But in October, that may have picked up, and substantially. The S&P Market US Factory PMI contracted its least in 3 months, and their Services PMI is still expanding at a good pace and has been now for 6 months. This helps explain why employment has been stronger than expected for some time. The other encouraging feature of these PMI reports is that inflation pressure seems to be absent in the US now. The Kansas City Fed's regional factory survey showed these trends. Factory activity barely contracting now, which was a sharp improvement from September, and their services sector was expanding still. Although firms in both regional and national surveys are increasingly optimistic about the future, they seem to be ignoring or looking past the damage the extended Boeing strike will cause. Also encouraging for them is that American new home sales were on the rise in September, rising to a 738,000 annual rate, its highest since the outlier May 2023 spike. The September level is 6.3% higher than a year ago. This time, new home sales seem to be on a rising trend. In Japan, their flash October PMI report shows a contraction too in their factory sector, but also only a minor one. But output and new order levels slipped at a slightly faster rate. Their services sector isn't expanding either, according to this same report, a slip from the prior month. Apparently, Japanese businesses are struggling to adapt to their modest inflation pressures. And Korea reported its third quarter 2024 GDP yesterday, revealing a 1.5% growth rate, lower than the 2% expected and the 2.3% growth in the second quarter of 2024. India's October PMIs stayed strongly expansionary. New order levels were high, but there are signs of serious overheating, and inflation in India is a building concern. And there is no overheating in the EU, with everything ticking lower in October, but at least their service sector is still expanding. In Australia, their October PMI survey reveals that their factory sector is at a 53-month low, with a moderate contraction again. Their services sector, however, is just holding its own. An updated United Nations report shows that we have essentially run out of time to cut greenhouse gas emissions. We're on track for a 3-degree rise in global temperatures, and that will radically change how the planet operates, most of it not good. The difference between rhetoric and action is stark. China, which had a 5.2% rise in emissions, and India a 6.1% rise, are overwhelming the US's 1.4% fall and the EU's 7.5% restraint. Together, China and India released 20 million metric tons of greenhouse gas, 38% of the global total. Together, the US and EU released 9.2 million tons, or 17% of the total. Neither China nor India are likely to heed the evidence, and if Trump is elected, the US will likely switch sides, so it'll now be all up to how we adapt. Fortunately, New Zealand is in a relatively good position, or is at a less bad position. Container freight rates fell another 4% last week, but are still 118% higher than the 2019 pre-pandemic average. Again, it was outbound China routes that fell, but there's also a slip in the rates from the US to China. Bulk cargo rates fell a sharper 12.5% last week to be 28% lower than a year ago and back to pre-pandemic levels. And the US Treasury 10-year yield is now just on 4.19% and down 6 basis points from yesterday. And the price of gold will start today at $2,732 an ounce, and up $12 from yesterday. Oil prices are 50 US cents softer at just on $70 a barrel in the US, while the international Brent price is now just over $74 a barrel. And the Kiwi dollar starts today at 60.1 US cents and up 10 basis points from yesterday. Against the Aussie, we're also up 10 basis points at 90.6 Australian cents. Against the euro, they were down 10 basis points at 55.6 euro cents. That all means our trade-weighted index starts today at just on 68.9 and down 10 basis points from yesterday at this time. And the Bitcoin price starts today at $67,558 and up 2.5% from yesterday. Volatility over the past 24 hours has been moderate at just on plus or minus 2.1%. You can find links to the articles mentioned today in our show notes, and you can get more news affecting the economy in New Zealand from interest.co.nz. Kia ora, I'm David Chaston, and we'll do this again on Monday.